Hey everybody, Pastor Jim here from the Indian Lake Community Church in the Lighthouse of Indian Lake with your devotional for Tuesday, April the 7th. You may be able to hear some rain and thunder in the background, which is one of the reasons why I'm inside, not outside today, as we share this devotional. But I hope this finds you safe and well and dry as well. Today I want to do something a little different. I want to deviate from the readings that we've had today, and I want to go back and understand something from the Old Testament that relates very much to the New Testament and to what's going on with Jesus in Jerusalem at this time and with Holy Week itself. And so while Jesus is in Jerusalem, the town is everything's very crowded. There's a lot of people there because they are celebrating the Passover festival, which is a 7-day festival. And so that's one of the reasons why everything is so crowded. And while a lot of the Jewish people make pilgrimages to the temple because of the Passover time. And so it's very important how the Passover plays into what's happening with Jesus during this week. So let's first talk about the Passover. And to understand the Passover, we have to go back to the Old Testament. I know you don't want to go back to the Old Testament. Trust me, you got to spend some time in the Old Testament. So it all starts with the story of Joseph in Genesis being sold into slavery by his brothers and then being carried off to Egypt. That's the original event that starts all of this in motion. And so I hope you'll understand and read that at some point as to why the children of Israel ended up in Egypt. But the short story, they're there, and they become slaves. So the entire population, the children of Israel, God's chosen people, are enslaved by Pharaoh and the Egyptians, and they are using the children of Israel as slave labor to build their towns and cities and temples and all of these things. And it's very hard, back-breaking work, and they're very ruthless and harsh, the Egyptians are, to the Israelites. And so they cry out, and they cry out for help and for mercy, and God hears their cries. And so that's why he sends Moses. You remember he calls Moses at the burning bush. Moses has all these reasons why he can't go, and God says you're gonna go anyways. And so Moses is the one with Aaron who goes to Pharaoh and says that God wants you to set his people free. So they go and they make the request, and Pharaoh says no. And then you have the series of plagues, everything that happens to the Egyptians. When Pharaoh says no, he hardens his heart, and the Nile turns to blood, and Pharaoh says, okay, you can go. But then once everything clears up, he says, no, you can't. And this pattern repeats with frogs and flies and all kinds of different locusts and different plagues that would befall the Egyptians until finally Pharaoh has hardened his heart to the point that God's had enough, and he says to Moses to give these words to Pharaoh. So Moses goes to Pharaoh and he says, look, God is saying that the firstborn son of every household in Egypt will die tonight. He's going to take the life of the firstborn of every son in Egypt tonight because you have hardened your heart and you have not set his people free. He said from Pharaoh's own household down to the lowliest slave household and including livestock, the firstborn male of every household in Egypt is going to die. And Moses leaves Pharaoh with that. But God tells Moses that he's going to protect his people, the children of Israel. And how does he do this? He says, they are to take a lamb, not just any lamb, a 1-year-old lamb without blemish. There can be no blemishes. Remember, yesterday we talked about animals for sacrifice could have no blemishes. So they are to take a 1-year-old lamb with no blemishes, and they are to sacrifice the lamb. They are to take the blood of the lamb, and they are to paint the outside of the door posts at each home. And so on the sides and top of the door jamb, they are to paint the sides and top with the blood of the lamb to signify that they are protected by the blood of the lamb. Does that sound familiar? And then they are to stay in the house. Don't come out because God gives them the original stay-at-home order. Don't come out of the house. You're safe at home. Don't come out. And so that's how when the Lord passes over Egypt, he knows which households are Egyptians, which households are the children of Israel, and the children of Israel are left unharmed, and the firstborn, a male of every household in Egypt, dies. And so Pharaoh finally says, go, just go. Take your livestock, take your people, take whatever you've got, and go. And all of Egypt is mourning and wailing at the loss of their firstborn sons. So that is the original Passover event because the Lord passed over the houses of the Israelites and only affected the houses of the Egyptians. That's where the term Passover comes from. So then God instituted a very specific observance or festival for Passover, which was 7 days long. And it's all detailed as to how the children of Israel are to celebrate this event every year to commemorate what God did for them, leading them out of Egypt. Now, I've said many times that the Old Testament and New Testament are very much connected, and you can't understand one completely without understanding the other. Because in the Old Testament, I said, God is teaching the Israelites how to be his people and how to worship him. What is the significance then over the Passover as he's leading them out of Egypt? Well, one thing you got to remember is this. How were the children of Israel saved? They were saved by the innocent blood of a lamb. All right? Now, does that sound familiar? Because as we're going into Holy Week, how is Jesus portrayed? How is he referred to? He is the Lamb. It is by the blood of the Lamb that we are saved and we are redeemed and we are protected. In this event in the Passover, God is at work because ever since the fall at the Garden of Eden, God has been working to redeem his people. And in the Bible, we see these themes. There is the creation, there is the fall, there is redemption, which came through Christ, and eventually there will be new creation. What Revelation says is the new heaven and the new earth. We are living in this time of redemption. And our period of redemption, that we were redeemed, that we were saved by the blood of the Lamb. In this instance, the Israelites could very much connect the blood of the Lamb from the Passover, the innocent sacrifice of that Lamb for their safety and redemption, to the idea that Jesus is the Messiah and that he is the innocent lamb that will be slain. And by his blood, then we are redeemed and protected. Do you see the connection there? God's at work. God's always at work. Trust me that God is always at work and that God will bring about good through every event, even what we're going through now. You have to remember that God is there. God is at work. God is always at work and fulfilling his will and his plan. So as we go through this week and we continue to observe Holy Week with Jesus on his way to the cross, remember that he is innocent. Remember that he is without blame. Remember that he is without blemish. And by his blood, the innocent blood of the Lamb, you and I are protected, saved, and redeemed. Okay? All right, so that is our devotional for Tuesday, April the 7th. I hope you have a great day. God bless you, and I will see you back here again tomorrow.